Good afternoon. This is Politics and the Pulpit with your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Jerry Cook, coming to you live here on your hometown station. We have an action-packed and informative show for you today. We have two guests on the show, and I'll introduce our first guest, who many of you are seeing if you're on Facebook Live right now. I'll introduce our first guest in just a moment, but at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined in studio with missionary to Bolivia, Ethan Donoho, and we'll ask Ethan everything there is to ask a missionary in the 21st century. And by the way, Ethan will be with our church tonight, Freedom's Way Baptist Church, at 7 o'clock tonight, as Ethan will be presenting his burden to the country of Bolivia. Also, quick shameless plug. If you want to listen to Freedom's Way Baptist Church and our services this coming Sunday at 8 o'clock, the 8 o'clock in the morning, the Faith and Freedom Hour will be premiering, and it would love to have you listen in to an hour-long show. It's some of our past Sunday services, and we've cut and spliced them and made them listenable for those of you out there that want to listen to the Faith and Freedom Hour here on your hometown station. But my first guest today is none other than the very beautiful Sonja Schmidt. Sonja has worked as a Hollywood comedy writer and producer on networks ranging from Fox, NBC, ABC, and the Disney Channel. Sonja, thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you for letting me stop by.
Well, I am glad that you have, and it's been a few months since the last time we've had this soiree together, and it's my pleasure to have you today. And I understand that you have a new show that will be airing starting next week right here on Hometown Station with the Italian stallion Joe Messina. Tell the listeners a little bit about it.
Well, we're still working through the kinks, basically, but it's a show. It's not all political. It's going to be pop culture. It's really local. A lot of things that are happening in town. I'm really proud to be a part of that because our town's growing so fast.
Leaps and bounds. I understand it's called SCV Trending, I think, or Trending SCV.
Uh-huh. I think it's trending. They don't tell me anything. They
That's
just say,
it's all right.
Show up on Friday for a test show, and I do what I'm told, basically.
And what times is it going to air next week, Sonja?
6 to 9 a.m., so I'm sleeping here in the studio.
I was going to say,
that's
pretty. Listen, my son, Jerry Jr., who does our board op here for this show, and a couple of others, will be your board op for next week. So me trying to get my 17-year-old up and in the studio by 5 a.m. is going to be an act of God.
You ready for that, Jerry?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's on everybody's mind. We are now in an election year, and I've been through a few elections. You've been through a few elections, but let me ask you just a few quick questions here, Sonja, if you can just put your political hat on just for a moment. Does Nikki Haley stand a chance against former President Trump?
Of course not. Next question.
Tell me why you think that, Sonja, and I mean that honestly, because obviously the media is playing her up as the alternative. They're really hoping to get past Iowa next Tuesday so they can get to that New Hampshire primary, because that's where they think that's going to be their chance to stop former President Trump. And so tell us a little bit about why you think that isn't the case.
You just answered your own question. If the media is behind her, that gives the base something to really be skeptical of.
Yeah.
It's weird how I think we can safely say she's a rhino.
Yeah.
She's being supported by people that we're very, very leery of and that aren't on our side at all. Not the people, not we the people.
Yeah.
So, and she's making some huge mistakes. I mean, come on, slavery. The Civil War is not about slavery.
It wasn't?
No, but you know what? And years ago, when she was working for Trump, she just got signed on. I thought, wow, this is an interesting woman, you know? But
and she did relatively well as governor of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. But no, because she's endorsed by some real big money, some real big corporations, that makes her not winnable against Trump. Trump's strong suits are completely opposite of hers, and that's what we love about him.
No, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things I would compare it to, if we can look back to history just for a moment here, is the 1976 race on the Republican side between Gerald Ford, who was looking for a second term, and Ronald Reagan, who was running to his right in the primary. And, of course, we understand that ultimately Ford got the nod, but ultimately Jimmy Carter won that race. But this is the way I'm looking at this race here is you've got Nikki Haley, who's basically Gerald Ford,
Yes.
and then you've got Donald Trump, who would be our 21st century Ronald Reagan, if you
Yes,
will.
indeed.
And so, and I agree with you, and I would also echo the sentiments of Rush Limbaugh, who used to say, if the media is plugging them, then that is the guy or gal we should be running the opposite way of.
That's what I meant by you answered your own question.
Yeah.
The media are behind her? No way. And she's not, I hate to sound like Trump here, but she has no charisma. When you don't have a personality, it's very difficult. I personally don't like a woman on our side. I don't like any woman doing this, but using the fact that she's a woman as a reason to vote for her. And I don't like that she plays that card. And I really didn't like Chris Christie taking up for her at the last debate. Mm-hmm. She should have interrupted him and handled it herself.
Yeah, sounded like the strapping man coming in to save the day.
If you want to call Chris Christie strapping, okay, I'm going to let you do that. It's your show. But no, the fact that he did that, I guess, was chivalrous. But if she's going to be the president, and you're going to stand, up as a woman, then you better take over and fight your own battles.
Absolutely, I think you're completely right on that. Now, you've been through a few election cycles, as I have, Sonja. But one of the things that I was telling my congregation on Sunday, we do something. Actually, this is brand new for our church. We did something called State of the Church Address, kind of my version of State of the Union, but just as a pastor addressing the state of the church, both nationally, globally, and practically insofar as our church is concerned. But one of the things I said was, if you think previous election cycles have been ugly, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
And I have this horrible feeling that there is some sort of ugly ace up the sleeve the Democrats are going to try to play, or maybe play many things, in order to either get the former president off the ballot, as they've been trying already. I don't know what they've got up their sleeves, but do you think, as I do, Sonja, that this election cycle is going to be just ungodly in terms of just how ugly it's going to be?
It's a half-pass ugly at this point. Mm-hmm. What they're doing to him, I've never seen. Like you said, we've been through a few election cycles, but we've never seen hatred like this.
Yeah.
We've never seen there to be no bottom line as to what they would do to this man. Now, I heard early on, after he, after the election where, Biden somehow became our president, that they were going to destroy this man. Mm-hmm. They said financially and otherwise. And I have a girlfriend who says, when somebody tells you who they are, believe it. Yeah. And they have shown every sign of going just like nuts with this guy. And I'm really frightened for him. I'm really, I'm so happy that he handles it with the grace that he does, because I don't know who else could do that. Yeah. But it's really frightening. They're talking about putting this man in jail for 700 years on a case that they haven't even proven him to be guilty of. Yeah. That's pretty scary, and that's a pretty big change for our country. Yeah. If we do this now, and people say, well, if they do this, then, they stand the chance of having the other side do that. So the fact of the matter is we're never going to do that. We're so feckless, basically. But it's not a good precedent. It's really, really very scary. And I don't know what our country does if they take this man down. Now, that's a bigger question to me. I think that he can handle himself as far as he can. But I think the American people are going to be so disheartened and so angry that there's a side of me that says, or wants to believe, that this is purposeful. They want us to be this angry. They want some sort of civil unrest. They want some sort of, big upheaval. Then they can keep jailing us or whatever. But
yeah, they want to purposefully gin up the tension.
I think so, because you don't poke a bear that much if you don't expect to get attacked. Yeah. And they're really taking it too far. And I don't know how we're going to handle it if they really are able to convict this man and throw him into jail, keep him off the ballots for real.
The Democratic Party has essentially had a stronghold when it comes to the black vote. Mm-hmm. And they still essentially do. But here we have, for the last 8 years, the Democratic Party has essentially called Trump Hitler, a racist,
Right.
everything.
That's what they have to do.
And so, but for some reason, and I could see it this morning when I was watching the Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski was just beside herself that Trump would be getting a pretty sizable share of the black vote, and she's just like perplexed on air that this would even happen. Let me ask you a question, Sonja. If Trump ends up getting, let's just say, conservatively 20% of the black vote, what does that say to the Democratic Party? And do you think that basically upends their stranglehold on the black community?
I think it tells them, because they're so unself-aware, that they won't go, gosh, they won't stop and go, well, what did we do wrong? Because people are telling them every day. So all they have to do is, again, believe them. So I think if he gets 20%, and that's the number that they're talking about, the Democrats would lose in a fair election. I just don't believe it's going to be a fair election. I think they know how to do exactly what they did the last time. And I do believe that's why they're bringing over millions of immigrants.
Yeah.
I tell my my Latina girlfriend, I'm like, you're the new black people now.
Well,
our place.
I'll definitely let you and Joe Messina deal with that next week when you guys start your new morning show.
You know what's fun about us, though, is that we're both conservative, but we're not always on the same page.
Sure.
So it's not like you're going to be listening to an echo chamber. You know, and I challenge him, he challenges
Sonja
me.
Schmidt has an opinion that's contrary to the Italian Stallion.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
In many cases,
I can't wait to hear that. Well, let's real quick prediction here before we change course on topics. How big do you think Trump's win will be next week, Tuesday, at the Iowa caucuses?
How big do I think his what?
His win will be.
Oh, ridiculous.
You think he'll
Sick.
be? You think he'll be 30 points ahead of the second place finisher?
Absolutely. I mean,
can you imagine if it is? Because according to what I heard, Sonja, the other day, is the largest share was 12 points by George H.W. Bush in 1988.
Wow. Okay.
12 points. And that's between the first place and the second place. If he does anything over 12 points,
that's pretty
that's
huge.
history making. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, he's been history making through everything he does. He's been... You know, I was not a Trump fan in the beginning.
Neither was I.
Really?
Neither
okay.
was I.
So I'm so glad that I came around, and I'm really, really happy that I've been privileged to watch this whole thing.
Yeah.
This is the best story ever in terms of politics.
No, I agree with you.
It really is.
We're going to quickly switch gears here. Being that you are very acquainted with Hollywood, as we introduced you earlier, have you noticed at all how fast big budget movies lately are tanking at the box office? I mean, you have been acquainted with Fox, NBC, ABC, the Disney Channel, which of course I was telling you off air earlier how Disney has slipped from the mantle of number one in box office, and now it's Universal, I think, overtook them last year. Is go woke or go broke right?
It's their plan, and it was their plan even when I was there. Mm-hmm. They would literally say the public is stupid, and we just need to keep shoving it down their throats until they get it. They just felt like they knew more than we did, but they do have an agenda. Hollywood is all about telling their stories. I don't know if you or have any reason to see the Barbie movie. I didn't see it, even though I'm a huge fan of Margot Robbie.
By the way, my son Jerry watched the Barbie movie.
And what do we think about that?
What did you think of the Barbie movie? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, well, my son, who's 17, and in the know, didn't like the Barbie movie.
The message, I think it's a good visual movie. In fact, it won something visually, but in the Golden Globes. But the message is like, you want to go to a movie to just enjoy yourself. You don't want to alienate half the country. You don't want to say boys are bad. Mm-hmm. I don't want my granddaughter loved it. I'm not happy with the fact that she saw it, and my daughter sort of justifies the message. But I think maybe if these girls got this message one time, okay. But this is the consistent message that men are the oppressors. Now, here's the funny thing about the Barbie movie. This is completely run by, the executive produced by women. These women are complaining about how hard they have it, how bad things are, and how men are the oppressors, where they're the chief executives of this movie. And who designed the Barbie doll, who's made $1 gazillion off of it? A woman.
Yeah.
So it's a real hard message to swallow, this woe is me from women who were very successful.
Real quick, Sonja, in the time that you were originally with Hollywood years ago and today, do you think much has changed, or do you think they're just more brazen about it today?
Much has changed, indeed. We were talking earlier about a show I worked on called In Living Color, and it was basically sort of like the Black Saturday Night Live, but funny. And there's a lot of things that we did on that show that you could never do now. I don't know if you remember a sketch we did called Men on Film.
I remember it.
There are these two...
Hated it.
These outrageously gay men were doing movie reviews and, restaurant reviews, gym reviews, and we threw in every sort of innuendo as possible. But the fact of the matter is we could not make fun of that nowadays. I don't think so. So, yeah, I think it's changed a lot. When I worked for Disney, I had a mother tell me once, she says, this is the one channel I can leave on in my house and I don't have to worry about my child, whatever she sees. In my case, with my granddaughter, who is now 10, whenever she watches it, we can see a change in her behavior.
Absolutely.
And we've had to ban her from watching it because she gets real sassy, real smart mouth, real ungrateful. But these are the characters that Disney now thinks is marketable.
Yeah. Well, there is no doubt that this whole go woke or go broke has essentially hit places like Disney, but because they're they're rolling in money, that they probably think, just as you said, let's just keep force feeding the public what they need to hear, but ultimately they're going to finally acquiesce and finally be on our side of this whole issue.
It's the same thing you were talking about, the Democrats losing the black vote. You would think they would listen to black people and find out why.
But we know the Democrats won't do that. But it is a pleasure having Sonja Schmidt on the show today on Politics in the Pulpit. Sonja, one last plug for your new show next week. What's it called?
I don't know.
It's called SCV Trending.
SCV Trending.
And it's Sonja Schmidt. It's Joe Messina, the Italian Stallion. It starts at 6 a.m. next Tuesday, and it runs to 9 o'clock. And you'll be talking about all kinds of things cultural, and you'll be a contrarian to Joe.
Yeah, we're even going to do like local businesses. We're going to frequent them and do shows from there too. So you'll get to find out about some of the new places that are opening up.
So you guys out there,
town.
Please listen to SCV Trending next week starting Tuesday at 6 a.m. Thank you for stopping by, and welcome to the Hometown Station family, Sonja Schmidt.
Thank you.
God bless you. We'll catch you in a minute here on Politics in the Pulpit. All right, we're back here live on your hometown station. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, on Politics and the Pulpit. Again, just a quick plug. If you want to hear Freedom's Way Baptist Church every Sunday, you'll be able to hear Freedom's Way Baptist Church this coming Sunday on your hometown station at 8 a.m. for the Faith and Freedom Hour. And again, that will air starting this Sunday, January 14th. Encourage you to listen in to the Faith and Freedom Hour. Well, we're back here, and as I promised at the top of the hour, we have got a missionary with us today. This is our second guest, Ethan Donoho, who is raising support to get on the mission field of Bolivia. Ethan, would you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and about your family?
So my name is Ethan Donoho, as you mentioned, and my family and I are missionaries on our way to Bolivia, South America. We're with Baptist International Missions Incorporated. Our ascending church is Roanoke Baptist Church in Roanoke, Indiana. And I was the youth pastor there for actually just shy of 6 years before starting the deputation trail. And then we started a full-time deputation in the month of June, and at 38% of our support, so we praise God for that. My wife's name is Lydia, and my daughters are Zoe, she's 4, and Chloe, she's 3.
So, it's my understanding that you visited the Reagan Library yesterday in Simi Valley. How was that experience? And tell everybody what you thought about that.
Oh, that was awesome. I love the American history. Of course, Reagan was a great president. I loved seeing all of the military, the plane, and then the helicopter. And then it was a great time. I'm so thankful.
You'd mentioned that you have a friend back home that is a big Reagan buff.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure you probably rubbed that in his nose.
Yes, lots of pictures.
I noticed it on Facebook that you had well over 35, 40 pictures on your Facebook site, so I'm glad. Did the girls enjoy themselves? I mean, they're 3 and 4.
Right.
And I did see them standing in the media thing and riding a horse or something like that. But What do you think they took out of that trip?
They liked pressing all the buttons for the displays. That was their favorite part.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, they don't know who Ronald Reagan was, but thankfully, your wife and yourself were able to enjoy that in a great way. And I'm sure the weather's great here in Southern California compared to Indiana.
Oh yes, it's been snowing a lot back home.
Yeah, you're originally from California, if I'm not mistaken, born in Martinez.
I was actually born in San Ramon, but grew up in Martinez.
Okay, and tell folks where that is. That's Bay Area, correct?
So it's East Bay, I'd say about 45 minutes east of like San Francisco.
And how long were you in California before you finally moved out of the state?
So I lived in California up until I was probably, I think 25 when we moved to Indiana. So my whole life up to that point, except for 4 years when I lived in Alaska.
Oh, you lived in Alaska. Okay. Let me ask you the question. Considering that, I'm a California boy, you're originally a California boy, what do folks in Indiana think about Californians?
A bunch of liberals.
Okay. Do they think we're just, even the churches out here, just a bunch of pink-haired wackos that are all compromised?
No, they know there's some good ones, but they also know that we need more good churches like that out here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm one of those guys that definitely am all about church planting, especially here in California.
Right.
In fact, I have this philosophy that I think we need to go to blue states and plant good, solid churches in blue states and get those states to get out of that blue tone and maybe purple and into the red, and not just to make them Republican, but to see them as Bible-believing Christians. So I'd encourage folks to pray about those blue states. Well, let me ask you this question. You're on the road with your family. What is life like as a missionary traveling from place to place with your wife and your 2 kids? I know it's got to be frustrating sometimes. I know sometimes you got to put on a happy face. But just kind of for the listeners, what's it like traveling from church to church, from place to place? New meals you don't like, meals you do like. Just be honest with the crowd.
It has its ups and downs, pros and cons. I love visiting all the new states. We were really worried about traveling with our girls being so young at first, because I remember back when we were still in Indiana, we'd go out on a visitation on a Saturday just around town, and they'd get car sick.
Oh, wow.
Just around town.
Wow.
So we drove here to California all the way from Indiana. And thankfully we haven't had any incidents. I think the Lord has protected us a lot in that regard, but the girls have gotten better. And we try to be wise about it. We try not to do more than 5 hours in a day if we can help it. So 4 hours is a sweet spot, I'd say. But yes, it's constantly eating out. There was one day where we were going to go to the store. My older daughter, Zoe, she said, "What restaurant are we going to now?" We're not going out to eat. We're just going to pick up some things at the grocery store. And so you get real tired of eating out all the time.
Yeah.
So it's...
One of the things that I have a little bit of experience of this. Before I started Freedom's Way Baptist Church 22 years ago, I was in prison evangelism, and we would be traveling from church to church, and we were kind of at the whim of the pastor as to where they wanted to go to eat, or maybe we didn't even go out to eat. We'd eat at the church property or whatever the case might be. And yeah, there were times when we thought to ourselves, not the best food or not the healthiest food.
Right.
And then we realized that if we did not watch what we ate or pushed back at the table every once in a while, that things could get kind of unhealthy.
Oh, yes. I joke that they're the freshman 15 in college. Well, I think there's also the deputation 15.
I see.
So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah. So in terms of favorite places for your girls, where do they like to go if we do go out to eat? Because obviously I got to take you guys out to eat tonight. So where would the girls want to go?
Well, I know Zoe, she loves, what's the name of that restaurant? Black Bear Diner.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's good food, but I think she just likes kind of the ambiance of it. I'd say
Black Bear is everywhere.
Right, which is nice. And then I'd say Chloe's favorite's probably lately has been In-N-Out because she calls it crunchy hamburger.
It's what a hamburger's all about.
Right.
Yeah. And you guys don't have one back in Indiana, but of course, being a California guy, you know all about In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah.
And they're slowly moving back east, but I think it's probably taken a lot slower than your daughter would like.
Yes.
No doubt about that. Well, let me ask you this question, Ethan. Why Bolivia, and how did God clarify that in your heart?
So I had my wife spin a globe. I took a dart and I threw it and it landed No, I'm just kidding.
Sounds a little bit like I started Freedom's Way Baptist Church.
Right, you kind of picked a
We must
spot.
have went to the same college,
There you
Golden
go.
State. Yeah.
No, so when I was actually in high school, a missionary came to our church, who was actually from our church in Napa.
Okay.
He's been in Bolivia for over 18 years now. And so he had just gotten there to Bolivia. So our pastor, Pastor Ray, went to visit him in Bolivia. He came back and he showed pictures and videos saying that there's still many churches or many towns and cities in Bolivia that needed the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And so God used that to really give me a burden for Bolivia. Then several months down the road, while attending a teen camp, that's when I believe that I surrendered God, because I believe He called me to Bolivia.
And tell us a little bit about how you and your family are preparing yourself for life in Bolivia. I'm assuming you've already been there at least once or twice. Tell us a little bit about the culture there, a little bit about the differences, obviously stark differences between America and Bolivia. Mm-hmm. Give us a little bit of that.
So we took our survey trip in November of last year, or it should be 2 years ago now, so November of 2022. And we went during a time actually where we got to experience real Bolivian culture. Mm-hmm. I say that because we went during a time of civil protesting.
Okay.
So we flew into Bolivia, and we flew into the largest city, Santa Cruz. It's of the 12 million people that live in the whole country, 4 million live in that one city. And so we flew into that major city, and because of all the protesting, they put up roadblocks throughout the whole city, so we weren't able to leave that city and visit other parts of the country. So we spent our entire survey trip in that one city. And so that is the most modern city. So it didn't feel too different in that regard. They had a lot of the same, I guess, amenities we have here. Of course, you still can't drink the water. That's probably the toughest thing we're going to have to get used to, is not be able to drink tap water and things like that. So as far as what we're doing, we're just trying to learn Spanish. We're using Duolingo right now to kind of get a little bit of training in the language.
So Spanish is the
Spanish
that is the main language in Bolivia.
It is. It's the main language everyone speaks, and then they also have a lot of indigenous languages as well, but everyone speaks Spanish.
But you're going to be targeting some of the main cities, or are you going to go to some of the indigenous crowds, or however the Lord leads on that?
So part of our survey trip was I wanted to visit several cities,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately we couldn't. We physically weren't able to get there. And so we're going to start off working with that same missionary whose presentation really gave me the burden for Bolivia way back when I was in high school. We're going to start off working with him, and he's in that large city. And so during that year, while we're really adjusting to the language and the culture, I want to visit other cities and kind of see where God's going to lead us to plant a church. So as far as where specifically, when we plant a church, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. Explain to the people this desire for Bolivia other than the call, because, a lot of my listeners love America. Mm-hmm. I love America.
Amen.
But of course, as Christians, we're called to be globally minded, not
Mm-hmm.
just, domestic minded. Of course, we want the gospel all over California, all over the United States, but we also want it to be a global thing. I believe you mentioned that your wife is originally from China. Is that correct?
Well, she is third generation American.
Okay, so she was born here. Parents are from China, I'm assuming. And so how does, that's got to be a culture shock in some ways. I've gone to Europe a few times, and as much as I like Europe, I'm always wanting to come back to the United States,
Right.
obviously. But really, God's got to put that desire, that burden, that burning, if you will, in your heart for a place like Bolivia and for the people of
Right.
Bolivia. Have you had a chance to meet or preach in that language, and how far are you along in your studies in Spanish?
So I've taken 3 years of Spanish. I took 1 year in public school, high school Spanish, and I did 2 years of a Beca video Spanish. Okay. And so those last two, you squeeze those 2 years together, and I did about that 1 year of actual public school Spanish with a teacher who actually could speak it and really help you with that. So it's more bare minimum. Like, I could understand quite a bit. I know a lot of vocabulary, but then I can slowly, bits and pieces, put it together, and I can communicate, but a full-fledged language school is definitely something that we really are going to need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How long do you think it might take for you to finally say, I'm 90% fluent in Spanish?
Well, I'm planning on doing a year of language school, of intense, 9 to 5 or whatever it is, language school. And I'm hoping at the end of the year that we'll be pretty comfortable.
And tell us a little bit about the Bolivian government, Ethan. We're talking to Ethan Donoho, missionary to Bolivia. And I want to know a little bit about the Bolivian government, how antithetical they are to Christianity. I'm assuming because it's Spanish-speaking that probably Catholicism would be the main denomination there. Right. So tell us a little bit about their entrance exam for American missionaries to come there.
So the current president is actually an open socialist. And so he's...
So you should feel real welcome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But actually, so Santa Cruz, the largest city, their current governor of that, or I guess mayor of that city, he is more of a democratic mindset. So the whole reason for the protests when we were there is the president didn't want his seat, taken. Because on paper it's a democracy, but in reality it's a socialistic government. So he's trying to do his best to remain in power. But there's been enough growth in Santa Cruz that it could threaten his seat. So he was pushing off the census that would give them more votes on the next election. So that was the whole point of that. But as far as Christianity goes, they're open. They want the U.S. dollar to be there. So it shouldn't be a hindrance getting into the country.
You mean they want to change over to the U.S. dollar?
Well, no, they want the money.
Oh, they want our money. Gotcha.
Because as an American, I can't work there. I can't take their jobs and things like that. I have to become fully supported to even get into the country, or they won't let us in. So as long as the money's there, we can go in and pretty much do whatever we want.
So what would be the cost of living in Bolivia as opposed to California, which of course is astronomically high?
Oh, right.
But I'm assuming here, $10,000 a month is basically livable in California, give or take a few dollars. What about in Bolivia? What could you live on there on a reasonable scale?
You could get a nice place for, I'd say, $1,200, $1,300 a month. A nice 3-bedroom.
$1,200 to $1,300? Okay. Do you think you can get that, son, here for rent? No, I didn't think so. So, and how big of a place would $1,200 to $1,300 get you?
I'd say easily a 3-bedroom.
Really? Okay. So in terms of the money exchange, would our dollar be stronger against their currency, or is it vice versa?
So one of our dollars is 7 of their dollars.
Okay.
So it helps us going there, doesn't help them coming here.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of full support, what does that look like for you, Ethan? And for a family of 4 in Bolivia to live comfortably, what would you need?
So we're trying to raise $7,500 a month.
Okay.
So that would be a little bit more than the missionary that we were with. He said he wouldn't come with less than $7,000. So we wanted to increase it a little bit, just because we don't know. We could end up losing support, or we know.
Well, that would never
always
happen,
going up.
Ethan.
In a
Churches
perfect
would
world,
never
right?
do that.
So $7,500 is our goal, and then that would be ministry expenses as well as personal expenses.
Gotcha. And let me ask you this question: have you had an opportunity to reach out, or at least see some of the other groups that you'd mentioned there in Bolivia? You said there's a city, and then there are the outskirts. Have you had an opportunity to visit some of those outskirts communities, if you will, the more tribal people, if you will?
So we weren't. Because of the protesting, they'd put up blockades. We literally couldn't leave the city. But the thing is about Santa Cruz, the nice thing is, because it's kind of the export of the whole country, everyone comes to Santa Cruz from all the other cities and villages because they need to get supplies. And Santa Cruz is the only place they can get those supplies. So a lot of times they come to you, if for those who are missionaries in Santa Cruz.
Yeah. And because it's a socialist government, that basically means that there is opposition to religion in some sense?
There's several different types of religions that are there, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't seem been too hard. Now, the only stipulation we have going into the country is we have to be part of a Bolivian missions board. But other than that, it seems to be pretty open, surprisingly.
We're talking to Ethan Donoho, a missionary to Bolivia. We'll come back with Ethan for our final segment here on Politics in the Pulpit. We'll catch you in just a second. You're live on Politics and the Pulpit. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook. We're talking to missionary Ethan Donoho to Bolivia. And those of you out there that are listening, you're probably wondering, what does a missionary do? Well, we've kind of covered that already, and obviously a missionary is meant to go out and spread the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, not only here domestically in the homeland of the United States of America, but of course around the world. And as Christians, that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to spread the gospel around the world. Ethan, could you tell the listeners a little bit how you came to faith in Christ?
So I was saved when I was 11. It was actually a time in my life, after a very traumatic experience in my life. When I was 11, my parents got divorced. My dad ended up moving to Anchorage, Alaska, to be with his sister who was dying of cancer. And while my dad moved away, my mom began dating some other guys. We weren't in church at this time or anything like that. And I remember one time my mom began dating this one guy, and to make a long story short, he introduced her into drugs. And she got addicted into drugs. And after, I'm not sure how long she was even into them, honestly, she finally said, had enough. She went to my brother, said, hey, I need help. I need to get over this. I don't want to do this anymore. So my brother helped my mom get into a drug rehab place. And so my sister is about 1.5 years older than I am. And my brother is 11 years older than I am. So he had just graduated from college, got married, and he just brought in his younger sister and brother to live with him while my mom got the help that she needed. And so my brother, who had gotten saved, actually Pastor Ray knocked on my brother's door on a Thursday night, I think, led him to Christ. My sister-in-law was already saved. They started going to that church. Of course, my brother got a burden for our family. I remember he actually came over and began to witness to all of us, and we all prayed and bowed our head and accepted Christ, but I didn't fully understand it. I remember thinking, I just said hell in the prayer, so I can't go to heaven anymore. And so some weeks went by. We were living with my brother at the time, and since my brother and his wife went out soul winning on Thursday nights with the church, my sister and I got to go with them. And so one night, Pastor Ray actually asked me to be his soul winning partner. I said, okay, I've never done this before, but why not, And so we're out door knocking in Napa, and he said, so Ethan, when did you get saved? I said, honestly, I didn't really understand the whole salvation thing. He says, well, wait a minute. He goes, you're out soul winning, telling people about Christ, and you're not even saved yet? And I was like, no, I guess not. And so under a streetlight in Napa, California on September 5th, 2002, I heard the gospel clearly, and I asked Christ to save me.
Amen. So tell me a little bit about spreading the gospel and sharing the gospel with a Bolivian person. Obviously, when we think of sharing the gospel in a Western sense, especially with an independent Baptist background, we're thinking soul winning, we're thinking, just give them the Romans road. Is it as easy, and forgive that, it's not really easy, but is it as easy as we take for granted here in the West as it would be in Bolivia, or does there need to be some more connectivity to people and for them to have some trust? How does that work?
I think it's the same there as it is here. So when we were there, of course, we don't speak enough Spanish to really witness, but we went with people who were witnessing. Of course, I'd pass out tracts. And some people, because of the Catholic background, they already know who Jesus is. Yeah. So in some countries, you have to start off with, Genesis and go in creation and things like that. We get to skip all that because they all know who Jesus is already. And so, and these people, they know the falseness of Catholicism, and they're looking for the truth. So when we tell them and can show them from the Bible what Jesus did for us, usually it's pretty easy for them to understand it, from my understanding.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to see them open. Of course, some people will take longer to lead to the Lord than others. It just depends on their background. A lot of the indigenous people have kind of a Mother Earth type of religion. Up in the indigenous mountains, there's a lot of where they worship, Mother Earth. Those would take longer because they have all these other gods they worship.
So there's a bit of spiritism that's been introduced into their to their Catholicism as well.
So the more you go up into the mountains, the more you find of that.
Yeah. I would assume that would be a lot more complicated to reach those folks. I remember years ago when I was in the Philippines, obviously the Philippines is essentially a Roman Catholic country as well, and we were ministering on the island of Mindoro, and we walked into the jungles in order to meet with some of the tribes back there, and we saw a mixture of Catholicism and what we would call spiritism, and it was a little bit harder of an egg to crack.
Right.
when you get back there. However, we do have one advantage. We have a pope today that obviously even a lot of Catholics are not very happy with.
Right.
And especially with the direction of this current pope. And of course, that is, I guess, to our benefit because a lot of them have basically tried to distance themselves with Pope Francis. And of course, our desire is to see them come to Christ, not necessarily to acquiesce to the Pope, of course. So, folks, if you want to support Ethan Donoho, Ethan, how would they do that? Could they go to a website? Is there a PayPal? What have you got set up for that?
So we have our missions agency is BIMI. So if you type in BIMI, so
And that's Baptist International
Missions Incorporated, with my name, Ethan Donoho. You can go to our page. It's under the deputation page. It's enlisted by alphabetical order, and you can do a one-time gift, or you can sign up for monthly donations as well.
Absolutely. And where are you in terms of support right now? I think you might have mentioned that, but what are you at?
So we're at 38%.
38%. We need to get that up there, don't we?
Amen. I'm hoping to be done with raising support by the end of this year.
Do you think, real quickly before we end the program, do you think there could be a better way for missionaries today to raise support as opposed to just go, take 2 years of their life and just be traveling everywhere and not enjoying the food at every church that you attend?
I think the best thing churches can do is do a higher dollar amount with fewer missionaries, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do at Freedom's Way Baptist Church. That was a philosophy I took a long time ago. I came out of a Baptist Bible Fellowship church from Springfield, Missouri, and the philosophy was, well, we support 300 missionaries. Well, unfortunately, they're all for $20 a month,
right.
And that might have worked in 1975, 1985, but that definitely doesn't work today.
Right.
And I do think that the philosophy of a lower amount of missionary, but for higher dollar, would allow that missionary to get on the field much quicker than spreading it out over 2 to 3 year period. In fact, I know of a missionary that spent 3.5 years on deputation before they ever got to the field, and unfortunately, that missionary passed away while on the field. Maybe 6 months on the field because he ended up contracting some sort of disease, and it's unfortunate, But if you are interested in helping Ethan Donoho, one more time on BMI, Ethan?
So BIMI, you can Google that with my name, Ethan Donoho, and that should pull up to our page.
And if you are interested in listening to Ethan Donoho, he'll be presenting his ministry tonight at Freedom's Way Baptist Church, and you'll be able to meet his wife and his 2 wonderful kids. And where are you off to next?
We go to Sun and Shield Baptist Church in Mazana, Arizona.
Oh, wow. Where's that? It's in Arizona.
Somewhere in Arizona, yes.
So you're going pretty far from here. I mean, how long have you been in California?
Since October, actually.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
we've been here a while.
Not too long, but enough, right? Mm-hmm. Have you had, just in closing, any bad experiences in California besides when you first came to Freedom's Way?
No. I think it's been It's been fun to be around family, so it's been nice for the holidays.
Absolutely. Well, Ethan Donoho, thank you so much for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. Looking forward to hearing you tonight at Freedom's Way Baptist Church. And again, if you want to support Ethan, check him out there on BIMI and make sure you get his name right. Ethan, E-T-H-A-N, Donohue, D-O-N-O-H-O.
There you go.
There you go, Donoho. And then, real quick, plug, don't forget, next Tuesday, SCV Trending with Joe Messina and Sonja Schmidt. That'll start at 6 a.m. and run to 9 a.m. next week. Again, we're excited about Sonja joining the hometown station family here. And then also, if you want to listen to the Faith and Freedom Hour, this coming Sunday, January 14th at 8 a.m. right here on your hometown station, you'll be able to hear the Bishop of Santa Clarita. I think our sermon this Sunday is There Is Only One Way, and I think you'll enjoy that. And of course, you can share that sermon straight from Hometown Station to anybody that you want. So we'll catch you next week here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station.